The heat was merciless that afternoon in Redstone Valley, the kind that shimmered off the asphalt and left even the mesquite trees drooping. I pulled my pickup, heavy with 800 pounds of feed, up the dusty road toward my ranch, squinting through the glare at something unusual glinting in the sun. At first, I thought it was the heat playing tricks. But as I got closer, reality punched me hard. There it was, a massive industrial padlock sealing the gate to my land. Hanging from it was a laminated notice stamped with the Redstone Valley HOA logo. Property secured for covenant violations. Contact HOA for resolution. I sat there a moment, stunned, staring at the lock, then passed it to where my 12 bisons stood restless in the dry pasture. Chief, my lead bull, a 2,000-pound beast of muscle and horns, paced the fence line with agitation, picking up the tension in the air. I slammed the truck into park and climbed out, my boots kicking up clouds of dust. My fingers itched to reach for the bolt cutters in the truck bed. But years of courtroom battles whispered caution into my ear. Destroying the lock could be spun against me, and I knew better than to hand ammunition to people like Delilah Armstrong, the HOA president, on a silver platter. Before I could decide my next move, my wife, Emily, pulled up, stepping out with her schoolteacher's calm that so often kept me from blowing my top. "Rhett, what's going on?" she asked, reading the situation instantly. "They locked us out," I growled, jerking a thumb at the padlock. "And the herd's been unfed since morning." Emily's eyes darkened, but she said nothing. Instead, she pulled out her phone and started recording everything. "Smart woman. We could cut it," she suggested softly. "And let them scream vandalism?" "Not yet." I looked toward the west side, where a sagging old fence line still ran low to the ground. "We'll climb." Not my finest hour, a 6'4" ex-attorney scrambling over a fence with bags of feed, while Emily filmed the ridiculousness for evidence. But the bison needed their meal. The next morning, I was at the HOA office before the dew burned off the ground. As soon as the door unlocked, I stormed in, demanding answers. Behind the desk sat Shelby Crane, a woman whose permanent scowl had aged her a decade beyond her years. She didn't even glance up. "File a complaint," she said blandly. "Processing time is 10 business days." I leaned on the counter, forcing her to meet my eyes. "My animals are trapped without food or water. That's animal cruelty under Texas law." Finally, some movement, though not the kind I wanted. The inner door swung open and there stood Delilah Armstrong herself, the self-proclaimed queen of Redstone Valley. Designer sunglasses perched atop her blonde bob, a crisp white blazer looking comically out of place in the dusty heat. "Mr. Walker," she said sweetly. "Is there a problem?" "You locked me out of my own ranch," I said evenly. "Remove the lock." Delilah smiled like a shark. "Your property has been in violation for months, Mr. Walker. We've issued notices about the state of your fencing and the visible agricultural equipment. Section 12.3 of the HOA Charter." I folded my arms. And I've responded each time, citing the grandfather clause exempting properties established before the HOA's formation. That's my land. Been a ranch since my great-uncle broke the first ground. Her smile sharpened. "Maintenance isn't grandfathered. Learn to read the covenants, cowboy." Before I could respond, Warren Tate, the HOA's vice president and Delilah's shadow, stepped out from the back. His handshake grin faded the moment he saw me. "Perhaps," Warren drawled, "you should consider selling. There are developers offering good money for ranches like yours." And there it was. They didn't care about my fence. They cared about my water. That night, Emily spread a stack of printed documents across our kitchen table: Texas livestock laws, HOA bylaws, property maps. She pointed to a statute with a firm finger. "They can't lock up livestock property," she said. "Animal welfare protections override HOA aesthetics." "And I remember something else," I said, pulling out a battered folder. Inside was a copy of the original HOA charter, complete with Delilah's signature clearly stating the grandfathered rights of pre-existing agricultural properties. They thought they were squeezing a helpless rancher. They forgot they were messing with a man who'd spent 15 years gutting multi-million-dollar corporations in courtrooms from New York to San Francisco. Over coffee at the Redstone Diner the next morning, my old law school buddy, Maria Vasquez, laid it out plainly: they're playing a game of pressure. But they picked the wrong opponent. As we talked, Ben Carter, an old-timer whose ranch bordered mine, ambled over, his cane thumping against the cracked linoleum. "Watch your back, son," he said without preamble. They're after your water rights. Sweetwater Creek runs under your land. They can't build their fancy subdivision without it. He unrolled a brittle map, pointing with a weathered finger at the blue lines running under my ranch. And you're sitting right on top of the motherlode. Back home, Emily and I watched Chief and the others graze while the sun dipped below the horizon. They think they've trapped us, Emily said, slipping her hand into mine. I smiled grimly. They just backed us into a fight we're going to win. The escalation came quickly. The next day, 2 HOA inspectors, Shelby and some hired surveyor, trespassed onto our land, pretending to take violation measurements. Emily filmed the whole thing. When confronted, Shelby stammered about their right to inspect for compliance. I quoted the Texas Property Code back at her, pointing out that inspections required homeowner permission or public access, neither of which applied. They fled, but not before I noticed the tiny orange flags they left behind, marking not fence lines, but subterranean water paths. Their desperation stank. Emily's research soon uncovered glossy brochures promoting Redstone Estates, a luxury sustainable living community complete with naturally abundant aquifers. Promotional maps showed homes exactly where my ranch now stood. They'd already promised investors a development they didn't legally own, and they needed me gone. At the next HOA meeting, Delilah tried to ram through a bylaw limiting dangerous livestock, specifically banning more than 2 bison per property. I stood before the gathered homeowners and laid it all bare. The history of my ranch, the grandfather clause, the illegal lockout, the trespassing, the fraudulent development plans. When I finished, even people who had never once spoken to me were on their feet, shouting. The motion failed. That's when they went nuclear. Flat tires. Dead threats. Anonymous letters. And then the sabotage. A section of my fence near the north pasture weakened deliberately, just enough that the bison might eventually push through. Only we were ready. Emily had been working with the herd for months, training them to respond to a specific sound signal. When the Redstone Estates investors arrived for their open house tour, I gave the signal. Chief and the herd, gentle giants that they were, ambled through the sabotaged fence right into the middle of the manicured model home area. Chaos erupted. Investors screamed. Suits flew. Warren tripped over a lawn chair. Delilah screeched into her cell phone. Meanwhile, my bison calmly munched on the decorative grass. I immediately called the sheriff. Sheriff Logan, I said calmly. My livestock appear to have wandered onto public land through a fence someone else tampered with. Public land, not HOA land. Because I'd found the old survey maps. And because Maria had filed the lawsuit an hour before the open house started. When the sheriff arrived, Delilah and Warren tried to spin a story of dangerous animals threatening public safety. The sheriff wasn't buying it, especially not after I handed over video footage of Warren's hired hands sawing at my fence the night before. Within hours, the real story exploded. State environmental officials launched an investigation. Investors pulled out. The Sweetwater Estates project collapsed. Delilah and Warren were arrested for securities fraud, conspiracy, and trespassing. Their empire crumbled overnight, and Redstone Valley changed. The HOA was dismantled. A new neighborhood association formed with transparency, respect for tradition, and a deep appreciation for the history and community that had existed long before Delilah's manicure ever touched a ballot. Today, Chief and the herd graze freely across 50 sun-drenched acres. Emily teaches conservation classes to school kids on weekends. I'm starting a nonprofit to protect small landowners from predatory developments. And hanging in my barn, right above the feed bins, is the old industrial padlock they once used to try and chain me out of my own life. A reminder that no matter how powerful someone thinks they are, they'll never outlast a stubborn rancher, a determined wife, and a herd of hungry, unstoppable bison.